que viene se le nota más feliz.
Sí, se le ve bien.
Hola, buenos días.
Hi, good morning, and welcome to a new presentation of the films that compete in the official section of this 70th edition of the San Sebastian Film Festival. As you know, it's a film, The Consagración de la Primavera, The Rite of Spring, a new film by Fernando FRANCO, this is the third time he competes for the Silver Shell in the festival. And before I start, let me introduce you to who's here. The team, the film on the far end, JAIME ORTIZ de ARTIÑANO, producer, KOLDO ZUAZUA, producer, TELMO IRURETA, actor, VALÈRIA SOROLLA, actress, FERNANDO FRANCO, director, and Emma SUÁREZ, actress. And as many of you, let's start directly with the questions. I'm not too sure if anyone wants to start up with the first question, please. Okay, in the front row. Hi, good morning. My question, albeit the film, there are 2 or 3 jokes that the characters tell. When preparing the script, or whether you address perhaps putting in a bit more humor to the story per se, apart from the jokes. I'm not going to make a comedy, obviously, but to put in any more comical moments, perhaps. Well, thank you. Good morning. Not a priori, nor beforehand. Well, we can say the film is a drama. The truth is there are a few jokes at a given moment, but I didn't want to take it more into the field of comedy because I'm governed by what I think the characters ask of me. And in this case, I think David's character, portrayed by TELMO, he did contribute some doses of humor, but I didn't want to go down that line. There's a question in the back. Hi, good morning. Congratulations, first of all, for the film. I'd like to ask you, what was the process in documenting and preparing the story? Because I imagine it's not precisely that easy to find all the information to set up a story based not only on this subject matter, but these characters as well. We can say that the documentation with the previous films, it's been very long. I usually dedicate a lot of time to this. I usually document myself going to sources, be it books or films, and looking through internet. In this case, I don't think it's a film only about sexual assistance, but I think that's the background. I documented myself quite a lot of that. I did a course in Barcelona, and dedicating a lot of time. And then also, I can say, TELMO, it was quite clear from the outset that he wanted the character should be portrayed by someone who did have really cerebral palsy, not an actor. He's an actor, but he's got cerebral palsy. I didn't want an actor that doesn't have it and to portray that role. So therefore, I always leave the script quite open, vis-a-vis talking with the actors and actresses and incorporating things. And with TELMO as well, we were talking about this. And TELMO also proposed things. So therefore, there's a work in this sense of documentation in real time and in first person, so to speak, working together with him. A question here. Above all, congratulations for the film. I saw it yesterday in El Principal Theatre, and I went home very happy, and I had sweet dreams. What drew my attention was how natural that the dialogues. And I'd just like to ask you, how do you make it so that those dialogues are so realistic, and it seems that they could be having in real life, or whether that's worked upon very hard, or the contrary, you leave spontaneity to the people who have to maintain those dialogues so they can be, done so freshly. And congratulations, because the film, obviously, what it tells is the discovery, 18 years old, arriving in a big city, and that's marvelous. And that initial journey, for example, that odyssey, so to say, of the Rite of Spring, which is her life. but I also think that it puts things in their place. I think that sex should be taken much more naturally in general, not only by collectives or people, that we've got prejudice against them. And the film, no, it manages to achieve transmitting that treatment of sexuality as something natural that we shouldn't give any religious or mystic transcendence to, because then whatever happens, what happens. So therefore, the question, that's the question. How do you achieve those fresh dialogues, and whether you leave it to the actors to be spontaneous, or is that oriented or guided, and whether the sexual issue, apart from the fact that the main issue is the other one, whether it contributes, and it goes to show that let's not give it the importance that it has, albeit it's important, but not that much. Thank you. Thank you. As regards to your first question, it's a joint work, that is to say. When writing the script, I'm concerned that the dialogues can sound realistic. I write and read them, but then we rehearse quite a lot, and we came to the rehearsal time. In all of my films, I do the same thing, where with the script in front of us, knowing it's a means to an end, and we work upon this. And I can say that I have a lie detector on alert. That is to say, that's what I call it. When you don't believe anything, if you've got good actors and actresses, such as the case here, I believe, if something doesn't work, it's not that they're doing it poorly, and I'm sure it's poorly written. So therefore, we have to leave them also to propose things and modifying the script on the go. I'm only talking, I don't know if anyone wants to add on. No, continue. And then as regards to the second question, yes, we can say that in general, the 3 films that I've made so far, they're a bit underground, but nevertheless, but in this case to talk, amongst other things, about sexuality of a person who has a cerebral palsy, well, it's an issue which beforehand puts people into a field which has a lot of prejudices towards it beforehand. And what you were talking about, how to standardize the film and the subject matter, it was to counteract this, because it's a film that for me talks about intimacy, and it's a film which has been made against those prejudices a priori. I'm not too sure if anyone wants to add anything. I don't know whether the actors, especially as regards the idea that has emerged in the questions of the search of naturalness, or being natural. I'd like to know, Valeria, Telmo, and Emma, how you worked on the film in the case of Valeria, for example. It's one of your first films as well, one of your first jobs. Could you talk about your experience in the film? It's my first film, yes. And as what you were talking about, the tone, I think it was a focus really to find this tone. And for me, this film is the confirmation that when things are worked on properly, they end up turning out well. We work, and when things are well prepared, what you want it comes out, albeit it might be the most natural thing in the world. And I think it's a mixture of the preparation in the rehearsals and what Fernando said of having an open book, to be aware of anything that all of a sudden we can say, no, this doesn't work, and to have the flexibility to be able to change it at any time. I like very much from the outset that Fernando said, for example, that he doesn't live a disability. That you don't have a family member with disability. So he said, anything that you think isn't that the right way, or can be done in a different way, he was very open to any changes. So therefore, that is also gives you quite a lot of trust and makes you feel much more relaxed. So, well, anything could be talked about, and I'm very happy to have worked with them. And look, here we are. I'm supporting what they're saying, but the truth is, it was easy because to work with Fernando, he's a director who's very kind. He's a director that creates a space of trust and harmony in which the actors feel comfortable. And as regards what you were saying about the script, I think the script was very well set up and very well written, and it defined quite precisely who each character was and what were the intentions of those characters. And it is true that we can say that when you find a script which is so well written, it makes things much simpler to portray and put into your mouth and to say those words of the script. But it is true that Fernando seeks to make sure everything is believable for actors, for example, to make so well written for it to be so natural and spontaneous is not that easy. And he has that detector which all of a sudden and he listens very well, and all of a sudden he realizes if what you're doing is imposted or is artificial and it doesn't come out spontaneously. And that is when we were rehearsing and preparing, and trying to find that subtle tone, try to find that balance of not going over the top, to not coming up, to making the grade, to say things spontaneously without losing the intention behind each of the words and each phrase. I remember that we worked, for example, the scene where Valeria and I had, the scene of the proposal. What do we call that scene? When it's postulated, that's the word. And it was to find that place in which these two people meet, and they are offering, each of them are offering each other something, and be in the back underground, but underlying there is a lot of other things happen, and give it intensity. Because for me it was very easy to want to set up those intentions. No, we had to clean it, and we had to clean that up. We had to filter it, and that was great work. There's a question there in the back. Hi. First of all, congratulations for the film, and I'd like to ask Emma Suárez, what was it like to get into the role of your character, the mother of David, or David's mother, whether you documented yourself before playing the role, or and Valeria, what was it like to get into a character, and how or did you document yourself or not? Well, the first thing, I read a script which excited me enormously. I thought it was a gift for me to be able to participate in this film. I would always be very thankful to Fernando, because for me this film, there are films which teach you, where you learn from characters that open up doors and windows. And for me, this film has been a revelation. Thanks to this film, I worked with Fernando, I met TELMO, I met Valeria, and it's been a way of working which is quite special, very personal, very kind, a way of making films that I personally believe in, from honesty, from sincerity. And yes, of course, the first thing I did was ask Fernando whether there were any documents or films, and I needed tools. But sincerely, the first thing I needed to portray my character was to meet TELMO, who was portrayed my son, which was indispensable for me. In fact, Fernando, in our first interview, says, "What do you need?" I said, "Well, the first thing I need is to get to know TELMO." And from when I met TELMO, I created my character, because the circumstances of this mother depending depend very much upon the character of her son, TELMO. He's the person that conditions my character, and we did see films. Fernando proposed information, very interesting information upon territories and that I didn't know, and windows started to open up for me. And I felt a lot of curiosity as regards this issue, because I think and believe that we're not aware of the needs and circumstances of people who coexist with us, and they appear in a wheelchair. So therefore, that always creates a lot of, we feel uncomfortable, we don't know how to behave, and we don't know what the needs are, and sometimes we escape and run away. And for me, it was to look in the face to the situation of someone like me who has circumstances, personal circumstances, which are different, like I might have in another sense, and to discover and get to know all of those fields. And to discover also that perhaps the inability lies in the way we look and gaze upon others. I think that the question was also for Valeria. Yes, in my case, obviously Laura discovers a new world as regards sexuality, and so therefore the same to me. The documentation or the research I carried out, shall we say, I think was focused, just like Laura, she started to discover this world, and above all, and what it awakens in her, because it's very important for her, that what awakens her vis-a-vis sexuality, perhaps this possibility of seeing sex from another perspective, from the care that has to be provided. And so therefore, also from the need that awakens in her of being close to David, or David, but that to find that and to find the justification of why this need arises and why she does what she does. That's where I approached it from the need of finding this space, this moment of quality, a quality contact. There's a question here in the front. Yes, hi. I'd like to ask about the poster of the film, at least the one we see here, which I think there's another poster. But the one we see here, we see, what was the idea? Fernando, do you have the idea? Or you proposed ideas for the poster of the film to make it? And then Valeria asked you precisely your first film, and to see in a big poster here in the festival, what's it? What do you think about that? Well, the truth is the posters, there's the first one which is painted by Begoña Arostegui, who also forms part of the crew and the cast of the film, and this one, which is made by a very good English studio. And what we did was, as I like to work, is to propose, and we will see what happens later. So therefore they proposed this. We just simply said to go all out and to do whatever they want to, and we gave them 100% freedom. They showed us several proposals. This was one, that several, and we liked this one, and one was very similar to girasoles silvestres, wildflowers, so therefore we couldn't use that. And then from the freedom that they approached it, we liked it, and that's how we developed it. And I'm very impressed. I'm very excited and very happy of the poster, and I like it very much. I don't know. Question here. Yes, hi, good morning. Congratulations to the whole team, and thank you very much for making a film like this to bring us close to a problems of disability like cerebral palsy. It awakens one to life and the dependent life of Valeria. And on the contrary to my colleague, I've just seen the film, and I'm still excited, and I'm very happy from what I've seen. And I've shown my messages, sent messages to my most intimate people recommending this film. I don't understand too much about films. I love films and I enjoy them. And it seems to me that you work a lot, in this case, in the case of Valeria, of those close-ups, those silences, those the ones that Jacqueline Bisset, or Jacqueline, Valeria, who's a very young person, how did she feel about that need to portray the character that she's had to confront, and whether it's true what they say that Fernando says, and congratulations to all of you. Thank you. Portraying this character for me has been a very deep and big journey. I feel that, I was thinking about this before, that I've shot 2 films. On the one hand, the whole journey that I do with Telmo and with Emma, which has been incredible. I remember the first few weeks with all the power and the need of obviously outlining the journey with them, and that was magical. And then also a journey which is a bit more introspective of everything else that happens, everything that happens to Laura internally in those close-ups that you were saying, in those moments on her own, which have been very revealing for me as an actress, that's to be able to confront those moments of the characters on her own, slowly but surely. They made more and more sense as well in the rehearsals as well as in the film. There's a question here, my colleague Alicia. Hi. Well, congratulations to everyone, undoubtedly, great job. My question has a lot to do with the background issue of the film. Why did you want to make a film, first of all, about this issue, Fernando, and then the relationship with religion? Why did you choose this girl who comes from a nun school with parents? She finds a very super free woman, and it was a blessing more than a punishment. The other guy laughs and they joke around, but how it envelopes religion, because I've got the feeling that Valeria's role is a bit letting herself go, because the truth, this isn't a sin, if you catch what I'm saying. That's my feeling. Talk about sin and religion and so on. Sorry. And also, Telmo, I wanted to ask you, how did you prepare your character? Because it seems you didn't prepare it. It seems that that's the way you are. It's me. How did you feel? Because you're showing a lot of interest in me, which is yours, and perhaps it's the characters and not yours, because you've got a life which is quite heavy and we don't know anything about it. Maybe you're not always stuck in the room. Thank you very much. Wow, great question. Well, let's see. Why am I interested in the subject matter? I imagine the subject matter you're referring to, sexuality in the ample sense of the word, in this specific case, of which has to do with a person who has cerebral palsy. Well, I'm interested because it seems it's an issue that people don't talk much about. Just like Emma said, for example, I think it's something which is, we're surrounded by people who are in a specific situation out in the street, but nevertheless, what we do is not look towards them. And it seems to me that films has a responsibility, and a director has a responsibility of what is shown on the screen, because it forms part of the collective imaginary of the people. So therefore, I think it's good to look at certain aspects closely that normally aren't addressed. And so therefore, perhaps that this isn't seen too much. I think this has a lot to do with a cultural aspect of our cultural aspect in Spain in general, but it has to also do with religion and a series of things. I think it's very important that the character can also take that perspective, because that represents most of the education and that we've had in this country. I spent 12 years studying at a Jesuit school, so therefore I imagine that I don't have the experience firsthand, like Telmo said, of having anyone close to me who's in a wheelchair, but I do have the experience of having been 12 years in a Jesuit school. I don't say whether this is good or bad, but at the end of the day, it does mark you. But that's a convergence. That's where I think both things converge. I hope I've answered you more or less. Okay. Well, at the beginning, when I saw the casting advertisement, and I'm finding someone with cerebral palsy, and I thought, well, there won't be too many in the casting, so I've got to try it. Well, I had to read a couple of scenes, and there was a joke that I had to also say, and I said, that's me. So I went to the casting, very relaxed. I thought, they'll realize that I'm David. And so I thought it was quite easy and very comfortable. The truth is that not everything in David is me, nor vice versa. But it was cool. I feel quite identified. I spend less time in the room. I'm more about going out and doing things, but I understand. And he's okay. I like him. Tell him, you're a teacher, and he's now registered in psychology because he's got to have a plan B. Just in case. And I can say this because I'm his mother in the film. Yep. I said, in the world of acting, well, I've got work today, and then all of a sudden I don't know whether I'm going to have work tomorrow. So when I don't have work, well, I'm going to do something else. For example, a psychologist. Then we'll see what happens. But I've always got something in mind, and I feel like doing many things, and for more films should be made. And there's a question over here. Okay, congratulations for the film. I'd like to ask you, you've been the editor of many films, and you've edited many of them, but all of a sudden you worked with another editor that's not you, and how would you like to think about, what do you think about this? Well, just like with the poster of the film, you propose things. I thought if I would have done the edited the film, I would have included a series of things that I thought I would have done it in a certain way, and that's what I was going to do. So nevertheless, though, I've always defended the role of the editors who give you an external perspective, and that's what I do when I work with other directors as well. So for in this case, it's the same thing. Miguel Doblado, who is the editor, who edited the film, he proposes things, I give him total freedom. Then obviously I have a filter. There are things that I like and I don't like, but to give the opportunity for things to emerge that naturally perhaps wouldn't emerge if I would have edited the film. That was a question. That's all, that's right. Okay, I'm not too sure whether I've left anything out. I hope I've answered your question. There's a question in the back there. Yes, hi. Here I am. This issue of sex, the issue of disability, I think that the link between the two is the issue of prostitution. Sex enters into and standardizes disability through sex prostitution, so therefore standardized prostitution. I would like to talk about the issue of prostitution within the context of the film, yes. The issue of sexual assistance, for me, is the trigger of the relationship between both characters. But I think what happens between both characters starts there and then it separates from there. It's something was premeditated for me, because I'd want to make a film about that issue, and I wanted to be a thesis film on sexual assistance, and then it goes off on a tangent. But the film addresses a series of issues. It does mention prostitution. Her character says it with certain doubts, because this isn't the same thing. He says, no, this is like an NGO, so therefore it addresses a series of issues, and then she receives an amount which she's not asking for, and then she's down, which she's got to leave the money back. And with those little gestures, my intention is to leave a series of gaps in the narrative so that the spectators can fill it in and draw their own conclusions. The film doesn't. I saw a film that talked about prostitution, and there's a moment in the film where one of the characters says a discourse and speech, and it gives a thesis about this. I didn't want to make a thesis. It's more or less what you're saying, but there are gaps there that I leave open so that everyone can draw their conclusions. People will understand it one way, and other people will understand it in another way when they see the film. Another question? Yes. You basically were answering what I was going to say, but I thought it was interesting, the subject matter. That's because the film, it talks about sexual assistance with Valéria's character very naturally. The truth is, it's much more complicated. A few months ago, there was a documentary, I think, on Catalan television about this issue, and it reminded me of which when they talk about mothers who masturbated their children or sons. And this generated a big turmoil and great controversy vis-a-vis that issue. So therefore, I'd like to ask you whether you had doubts or fears that the film could turn into a type of a small scandal because of that issue that it deals with. But it doesn't seem to me, but I'm just socially speaking, if you catch what I'm saying. And also the doubts that Valèria has when she knows other people are going to know what she's doing. And Telmo, I'd like to ask you, what do you think for people who have functional diversity, what this film can contribute, or when it's known, what it can contribute to you? Thank you. As regards to your first question, I'm aware that I'm getting in. My 3 films, I've got into quite difficult ground, but I always try to do so from the point of view of respect, first of all, and to try to be rigorous. And that's why I document, and I dedicate a lot of myself time to documenting myself about this. You've just said something that I agree with. The sexual issue is much more extensive. Yes, of course, it might have to do with what Valéria's character does in the film, or it may have to do with people who help 2 people who have functional diversity so that they can have sexual relations. So therefore, the umbrella is quite extensive as regards sexual assistance. I didn't want to do a thesis upon this subject matter, but I've circumscribed this to something which she starts to read about this, and that's where she takes another. And that is to say, it didn't necessarily have to be that way, what happens in the film. But of course, I'm not too sure about a scandal, but I think it's a very interesting issue or topic, so that whoever sees the film, and that's why I try to leave those gaps there in the film, so that people can start to think about this and not necessarily being in favor or against, just the fact that a film, at least it seems to me, that's why I like about films, allows you to think about this and address an issue and look the other way. For example, when you ask Telmo in a moment, that's okay for me. What I mean is that there's something in that film that invites you to reflect, to debate, or when we're having a few beers or whatever, but I think it's worthwhile, and that's why I made the film. That's the reason. Question for Telmo. Oh, Valèria. Sorry. As regards to the doubts that you were talking about, that's why I felt the need from the outset to address or getting into this subject matter from what it awakens in Laura and why she holds on to that, grabs onto that to find this connection, which is so powerful and so intimate with David. But of course, obviously, to approach this subject matter has awakened a debate in me which still exists. That is to say, on the one hand, to get to know all of the subject matter and the activism that exists as regards this issue on the one hand, and the other hand. So therefore, that's what I'm in. That's the situation I'm in at present. I like it because it's a situation, and this is a life that not everyone knows about, and very little has been talked about this. And if there is an interest, or that people don't dare to ask about this, like, for example, if I'd have seen a film like this, or a character such as David, I think it would have helped me quite a lot, or it would have encouraged me to do this, because I think that we're all try to feel identified or understood. So therefore, it seems to me interesting. I don't know what else to say. Sexuality, what I've seen in life with the people that this is an issue that is not known by the public in general, and if we don't talk about this, it's as if it doesn't exist, and it does exist. So therefore, we have to talk about this and educate and fuck as well, because otherwise, what's this life about? So we defend, well, I, for example, I'm also told in my work, in the last work that I've done, just like in the play that I'm in now, we also talk about disability and sexuality. It seems that I'm a bit obsessed, or people say, oh, you like it. Well, of course I do, but it's always that I always try to justify it. And then I've told myself, I don't have to justify myself anymore, because I say, if we've got to talk, we talk about it, and that's it. And I do like it, by the way.
Queda alguna pregunta por aquí, pero
There's another question, but as we're always very tight on the schedule, because we link with one thing with the other, I would like the producers, Jaime and KOLDO, to participate, because the truth is the Rite of Spring is a film, as a colleague has said at the beginning of this press conference, it makes you leave the film theater with a very positive attitude. And the truth is, throughout the story, we're addressing very complex issues. It's a film which is very ambitious in the emotions and the issues and the situations that it addresses. So therefore, in this time where there's a lot of production, we miss that risk by the producers to, in some cases, to undertake these cases. We've got the possibility of having them here. I think it's very interesting that they participate and explain why get involved in a film like the Rite of Spring beyond the professional link with Fernando. And I would like you to talk about this a bit. Hi. When we read the script for the first time 5 years ago or 4 years ago now, all of these issues that you've been talking about were addressed already in the script. And of course, as a producer, you address it, and with talking about it with KOLDO, it was a complete challenge, because it addresses many issues. It's a film which is very difficult to tell the story of it, what happened. We as a producer, we pick up a script and we've got to try to tell the distributors, the sales agents, and it's a film, and I always say, has an impossible pitch, because it addresses issues which are very complex. Sometimes they can generate a lot of debate. But then the script, you read the script, and it's what you saw in the film. It's not, it doesn't address, it addresses a series of reflection upon very complex issues, but it leaves them open, and it leaves, allows a discussion. It generates a reflection more than a specific thesis about this subject matter. So therefore, as a producer, it was a very complicated film, and in fact, it was very difficult to get it underway, and we suffered quite a lot, as well as Fernando, who's a producer, precisely because of this. But when you dedicated time to read the script and all the versions that we've read, you saw that the script was marvelous, just like Emma said, and it's a film that had to be made, and so therefore, for us as producers, to have managed to achieve it and to be here is marvelous, and we're very, very proud. I wanted to add the prejudices, for example. All of this lies in prejudices. We, as spectators of the film, as well as the agents who have to finance films. And so therefore, on the script, that's the problem, as Jaime, as he said, the issues that are dealt with in the film bring about a certain doubt or prejudice that this might reach the audience, could be of general interest to the audience. But then what happens is once the film, many of them didn't form part of the project, and they entered when the film was almost finished, and the film finished transmits another or conveys another feeling. So that's the issue. Quite often, we don't wager in favor of issues of this nature, which are very risky, which have a certain controversial, and there's certain prejudice and fear, and I said before, and makes it very difficult because there are misgivings. But you've got to be tough. You've got to have confidence and trust and the good work and talent, which all of these people on my left have. One final question here, and we have to congratulate you all for the film and Fernando Franco, specifically because, and for editing, because it's another film. I saw a making of the film where Emma Suárez says that Fernando Franco is a person who's got things very clear in his head. And at an editing level, talking about editing and bearing about your present and past as an editor, I'm quite curious to know whether there are any sequence that has been left out in the editing. And personally, and as you've taught us in the ECAM, and you've taught us as an editor, I'd like to know, Fernando Franco as a director, what do you think about that? And that one's not for me, that's for the rest of the actors. Okay, the first question. Oh, whether you've left out any scenes. Yes, some scenes have been left out in the editing room. The first edit, the film lasts about 17 minutes more from what you've seen. And as usual, especially in the start of the film, which is what we've cut more scenes of. And we've cut, and someone talked about religion and so on and so forth. There's a little bit more about that, and we just left it in the editing room because I didn't want to underline the religious side too much. But all films lose some scenes in the editing room, I think. As a director, what's he like? As a director, for me, it's very important to have accessibility to the director and communication to the director, to be able to talk to him, share beyond I do my work as an actress. Could you get closer to the microphone, Emma? And as a professional, we expect that to achieve a result, to do this work, for example, I have to communicate very much with and talk to the director to know what he wants from me and what he's looking for, what story he wants to tell, what tone the film should have. And that's possible when the director is available. And it creates that space for that encounter in which we can talk. When I have the possibility of asking questions, and that he can give me some clues, and that he can be a guide for me, who can tell me which way to go or what path to take. And with Fernando, I found all of this, apart from the fact that he's a person who's very kind, he's well-mannered, and very relaxed and calm, because he creates that space of harmony on set where all the cast and crew feels that they're doing something important, that their work and involvement is indispensable to tell the story. And plus, it creates an energy. We're all excited in participating. We all feel that we're doing something important, that we're telling a story which is necessary. Of course, it's a story, courageous, quote unquote, which a truth, I shouldn't say this, but along the lines of what KOLDO said, the prejudices and the fear that producers have to run the risk and finance a film. Why are we afraid to do this? Because at the end of the day, getting involved in films that are necessary and stories that are necessary to tell for the audience and which reflects us as a society and our limitations and our vulnerability. I think that's the important film, and that's the type of films you have to make. There's commercial films and entertainment, obviously, we all like, and that's all great and well and good. But personally, I like films that tell stories, and that when I leave the film theater or the cinema, that gives me some time to ask myself questions. That's why I'm very thankful and grateful for having worked with Fernando in this film. And it's mutual, by the way. Well, a golden brooch, really, for this. That was a beautiful ending. Thank you very much for the cast and crew of the Rite of Spring. Congratulations for your incredible film. Have a good day today for the premiere of the film, and thank you very much, of course, for coming along to the press conference.